We have breaking political news. Donald Trump has chosen J.D. Vance as his vice president. Meanwhile, Trump is in Milwaukee for the opening day of the National Republican Convention. CB24's Jamie Goodfrein joins us live with the very latest. Jamie.
Yeah, as you were just saying, we're finding out just moments ago via a tweet by the former president Donald Trump that he has officially announced Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. We knew that his selection was going to come down sometime today at day one of the Republican National Convention. With more on this and a lot more, I want to bring in John Misek, a politics and managing editor for MassLive.com. So I was going to start this interview, John, with a list of some of the names that are being thrown around, but we're just finding out about J.D. Vance. What's your thoughts on this? Are you surprised?
Good afternoon, Jamie. Senator J.D. Vance is at 39 will be one of the youngest vice presidents in the nation's history if he's eventually elected in November. He's a one-time outspoken Trump critic who's now become a very close ally of the president. He also comes from a critical swing state, Ohio, one of 6 that lead to the path to the White House, and one that Joe Biden recaptured on his way to the White House in 2020. So you've got a pretty decent political calculus here from the president, former president. Pardon me. He's also popular with the MAGA base, so we'll bring voters along with him.
There was a long list of people that the former president could have chosen. We saw names, including Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, even Nikki Haley, Tim Scott. Ultimately, why do you think J.D. reached the top of this list? Do you think it's because that the president looks at J.D. as someone that could take over in the event that if he wins the presidency, that he feels that J.D. could be the person to take the job in the event that he couldn't perform it anymore?
Yeah, that's probably certainly part of the calculus. The former President Trump is 78 years old, so that's something that he definitely has to think about. He also wants a loyal soldier in that position. Jamie, someone who will be loyal but won't eclipse him. If there's anything Donald Trump we know he doesn't like, it's having to share the spotlight. So J.D. Vance will fall in line loyally with the White House. And it's true, we did see that list of contenders get whittled down pretty significantly, even within the last few hours, with Marco Rubio and Doug Burgum both being dropped off the list, and Vance and Tim Scott, the Republican senator from South Carolina, an African-American who could have appealed to a very critical voting bloc in black voters, but ultimately it looks like President Trump ran the numbers, looked at the guy who could bring him an important swing state, and went from there.
John, I want to get your take on, the weekend's events. I mean, moving into prior to what happened in this assassination attempt, there was a fire that has been fueling within the Trump base, within the Republican Party. And you have to assume, given what took place over the weekend, that fire is probably at least double or triple the size. I'm wondering, how do you think the weekend's event is going to change the dynamics of the election and this campaign moving into the next couple of months?
Sure. Jamie, some enterprising soul was selling fight, fight, fight T-shirts for $35 not too long after all of this happened, with a picture that we now all seen of former President Trump's face bloodied with his fist aloft after that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. This race has been within the margin of error all along. There's some polls that have shown President Trump a little bit better of a lead, particularly in key swing states. We will have to see what the numbers look like. Certainly, this is going to galvanize his base. Those who thought that they were already sort of put upon will perhaps feel more put upon now and will rally to his cause. What will be interesting is seeing those uncommitted voters, that about 8% of the electorate who are still on the fence here, who were torn between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, which way they will break now as a result.
John, political violence, unfortunately, is something that is not something that the U.S. is a stranger to. And I'm curious, given the magnitude of what took place over the weekend, you're in America right now. How are Americans feeling? How are they dealing in the aftermath of an assassination attempt of not only of a former president, but also a presidential candidate?
I think on Saturday, Jamie, there was a lot of shock, there was a lot of surprise, and then that gave way to sort of an eventual resignation. As you correctly point out, this country is one that deals with gun violence on a regular basis. We are no stranger to political violence. You can only look back over the last couple of years, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the shooting of U.S. Representative Steve Scalise during the practice for a congressional baseball game, the violence at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. They have seen more than our share of this over the last couple of years. And I think when Americans took a breath and they thought about that, they sadly decided that this was part of a string. And we'd seen polling data prior to this on Saturday that most Americans thought or feared that political violence would be part of this campaign cycle.
And lastly, John, obviously with the weekend's events, it's put so much of the focus on the Republican National Convention, on the former president, but it's kind of taken away some of the focus off of all that was making headlines last week was on Joe Biden and whether or not he would step aside. What's the latest from what you're hearing, and what's your take on whether or not we could see Joe Biden make way for a new presidential candidate?
It's been interesting to the degree to which, Jamie, that narrative sort of subsided from the headlines in the wake of what happened on Saturday. We've seen the current president, Joe Biden, be very visible in the face of this crisis, doing what you expect presidents to do, going on primetime television, speaking from the Oval Office and consoling Americans and urging unity. He has an interview this evening with Lester Holt of NBC News, the American network, another high-profile opportunity for him to sort of make the case for his candidacy and to make the case for his fitness to serve. You get out there, Jimmy, and you talk with Biden loyalists, and they're all in for the president. And what we're finding is there's about 18 or 20 congressional Democrats who are calling on the president to step aside, but there are about 81 who are still flocked, who are still at his banner and still firmly in his corner. I've said to a couple of networks now that the longer Joe Biden stays in the race, the harder it will be for him to be dislodged. And I still think that is the case. So if he comes out tonight with a strong performance with Lester Holt, sort of the consoler in chief, the reassurer in chief, that may go some distance, but not a great distance to assuage concerns.
John Misek, I always appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
All right, Lena, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Jamie, thanks for that conversation. And again, if you're just following us here on CB24, we have some breaking political news. Donald Trump has chosen his running mate, and it'll be J.D. Vance. Stay with us as we keep a close eye on that story out of the U.S.